Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of Institute of Strategic Studies and China-Pakistan Studies Center, I welcome you to mark this very important day in Pakistan's history. May 29 is marked as a day of UN Peacekeepers. The dedication and courage demonstrated by UN Peacekeepers over the decades has played a critical role in strengthening peace across the world. Many professional soldiers, men and women serving under the UN lost their lives for the cause of peace, and today is the day that we honor their memories. Pakistan has a long history with UN peacekeeping, having been one of the largest contributors of troops and police for decades. The country has lost more than 150 peacekeepers throughout its history of peacekeeping. Ladies and gentlemen, in the recognition of services rendered by UN peacekeepers, China-Pakistan Studies Center at Institute of Strategic Studies, Islamabad, hosts this event. The aim of this event is to understand the significance of peacekeeping contributions and how Pakistan can politically as well as diplomatically consolidate on what it has achieved by making supreme sacrifices and contributions during peacekeeping missions across the world. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of China-Pakistan Studies Center and Institute of Strategic Studies, I take this opportunity to thank all the worthy speakers and the participants who have taken time out of their busy schedules to join us in celebrating this great day. With this brief introductory note, I shall now invite Director General, Institute of Strategic Studies, Ambassador Azaz, for his welcome remarks. And before his remarks, ladies and gentlemen, just a brief intro of Ambassador Chaudhary. Ambassador Chaudhary has served as a member of Foreign Service for 37 years. His last assignment was Ambassador of Pakistan to United States of America. Earlier, he served as Foreign Secretary of Pakistan. He also served as Ambassador of Pakistan to Netherlands. And he has also authored a book titled Pakistan Mirrored with Dutch Eyes. Ambassador Chaudhary, sir, you have the floor.
Thank you, Talat, very much. I join you in welcoming all our worthy speakers. I must commend you, Talat, for organizing this and for the information of our speakers. We in the Institute have 4 centers of excellence, one of which is China Study Center, but this event is being organized by the Institute as a whole. And I had requested Dr. Talat Shabib because he's a soldier turned academic. So I thought he would be the most appropriate person to do that. May I welcome our chief guest for this program, General Hilal Hussain, who, as you know, served in a number of important positions, but for us, he remains the Hilal Hussain who did a remarkable job in managing UN peacekeeping in the early 2000s in New York, where he was military advisor in our mission. But of course, after that, he has served in many other capacities, which bring him laurels and also to our country. And we're also very happy with to have with us the Inspector General of Police, Kaleem Imam Sahib. Thank you, sir, for sparing time. You are an iconic figure, and we also go back in time and have seen you and known you work for the cause of our country. And you are also a peacekeeper. That's why you are one of our honored guests. And Dr. Toghrul Jameen has been with us for some time, and we also launched his book, and he has worked a lot on Pakistan's role in UN peacekeeping. And thank you, Farooq. Farooq Iqbal Khan is my colleague in the Foreign Service of Pakistan. He served in for a number of years in the United Nations Secretariat, and now he's managing the portfolio of all multilateral work, mainly relating to United Nations, but a whole lot else falls under his purview. And so we are very happy to have you also with us. Thank you very much once again. Let me also join Talat in paying a special tribute to all peacekeepers for their courage for their dedication, for professionalism. And since Pakistan is a major troop contributor, has been throughout the history, our special tribute to Pakistani peacekeepers. And last but not the least, we must also remember the peacekeepers who laid down their life in the cause of duty and for the cause of world peace. They have documented stories of bravery. I do remember that in early 90s, 1994, the troops in Somalia, Pakistani troops, were the ones who rescued the American troops. There was also a movie made, Black Hawk Down, although unfortunately that movie did not do justice to the full facts. But we know, and the world knows, that it was Pakistani troops who ultimately managed and salvaged the situation. The peacekeepers are now in what is called peacekeeping operations, but the peacekeeping operation has also undergone a change. Now, sometimes the peacekeeping is now referred to peace building, and peace building has also turned into peace operations. And that because the nature of conflict has changed. The conflict, which was mainly interstate conflict, has now become more and more increasingly on intrastate conflict, and hence the need for having the police force as part of the peacekeepers. It started some 2 decades ago, and I remember at that time there was some resistance from our Ministry of Interior initially because of obvious reasons, because they needed police force here, but finally they obliged, and now we have a stream of police officers who have gone and served there and brought us laurels. One such person who could have joined today was all set, scheduled, Shahzadi Gulfam. She won an award also in 2011. Unfortunately, she could not join us today. The relevance for Pakistan, why we are celebrating this day, is mainly because we take great pride in contributing to international peace and security. In fact, maintenance of international peace and security is one of the cardinal principles of Pakistan's foreign policy. And we also want to demonstrate to the world that Pakistan is a country of peace. We also want to establish that our armed forces are second to none and capable of defending interests and people at home and abroad. These few words, I want to once again welcome all the speakers and thank you for joining us on this day on which we can be truly proud that Pakistan has contributed to the cause of world peace. Back to you, Talat.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much for your welcome remarks. And with this, I would go over to the first speaker, and our first speaker for today's event is Mr. Farooq Iqbal. Mr. Farooq Iqbal is Director General, United Nations at Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Farooq Sahab, you have the floor. You have to unmute. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Talat and Ambassador Azaz, for inviting me to speak on this very important occasion. First, let me salute to the 200,000 troops that Pakistan has contributed, 200,000 peacekeepers that have served in nearly 47 missions in 46 countries across the globe. It's a tribute to our armed forces, it's a tribute to our police forces, it's a tribute to Pakistan's commitment to peace and security across the globe. My second point would be that it is a very timely conversation, actually. It's not that the day has come, but just to bring you all on this that we've been planning to actually hold a preparatory peacekeeping meeting here in Islamabad in January 2021, alongside Netherlands, and it will be a preparatory meeting to a peacekeeping ministerial, which is scheduled for in South Korea in April 2021. Unfortunately, it has not materialized thus because the COVID-related situation has pushed everything behind. But it is important, I think, this conversation and perhaps similar subsequent conversation to build our approach towards that ministerial, especially in the area of peace and in safety and security, as well as some of the other issues, the future of peacekeeping that we are witnessing, the changes that some of which have been alluded by Ambassador Azaz. So I think this conversation could be a starting point of what we are trying to build towards that ministerial. We should go in that direction. It is indeed a wonderful day that we are able to celebrate with vigor this day about Pakistan and, of course, the global peacekeeping. I wanted to make just three broad points. First is how the peacekeeping architecture or how the peacekeeping have evolved. And this, I'm sure most of you know this, but I just want to build it to the point of where the future of peacekeeping that we see is shaping up. And I want to leave you with some of the thoughts and questions that perhaps would be useful for us to build this conversation and this discussion forward. The first is, I think starting from the picking thread from Ambassador Azaz that came from a peacekeeping started with truce monitoring. We have one of the most oldest peacekeeping mission here in our part of the world, which is the UNMOGIB, and that it morphed into the intra-state conflict at the end of the Cold War when situation started. And it actually, from monitoring to, it had started delving into political security, development, gender, human rights, monitoring of peace agreements. And of course, then came the need for, when it came to intra-state conflict, the need for policing, and then came the need for, of course, human rights, institution building, demobilization. So you see a trend that the United Nations or the peacekeeping have continued to build according to the circumstances. But let us also be clear that the UN's role in enforcing peace and security, or let's say peace and stability across the globe, is really limited. But whatever it is in the realm of peacekeeping. In fact, the successes that United Nations have thus far are only related to peacekeeping. Otherwise, there are very little that Security Council members have been able to do. Now, I think there are new concepts emerging, which we have not been able to have a defined approach. There are concepts of peace enforcement, like proactive defense, morphing into how peace could be enforced. But all this, and the fact that we are witnessing another trend, there is a greater need for delivery, while at the same time there is a lesser availability of resources from the side of the youth. And when you put this together, what is the picture of future of peacekeeping that is emerging in front of us? So I'll just make these 4 or 5 points which would be important for us to build up to this conversation. The first is that the notion of this agile deployment of forces, that small forces spread across a larger area, but supported by aviation, helicopters, and more so of a mechanized unit, which are able to perhaps deliver more. And this, in the view of the United Nations at least, or the policymakers, would also somehow connect to this very controversial issue or controversial topic, which is the protection of civilians, where the notion of peace enforcement comes into play, that peacekeepers should not be standing when the civilians are being slaughtered or are being affected. So there's a notion of this agile unity. The second is more and more countries have come into play. And particularly, I think most of you peacekeepers, and particularly our the Military Operation Directorate, know that the African situation, where Africans had demanded a more greater role in peacekeeping in their own region. And so there's now a notion of this hybrid peacekeeping mission. Perhaps one country provides troops, the other country provides this aviation or mechanized battalions, and etc. I think Indians are doing this with Kazakhstan. Pakistan is also trying to do this. But this is one area where we need to now evolve ourselves, as Pakistan, evolve ourselves. What is our position on the hybrid missions? I think we want to do this, but we still need to do a bit more on how we can deliver on the expectation of performance as well as resources. The third is the role of the women peacekeeper. There is a exceedingly important emphasis on the women peacekeeper. We have been one of the leading lights in this regard. Pakistani women, both from the armed forces and police, have performed. But now this role is becoming even more important. We have to achieve this target of 30% by 2025, which means we need to figure out a policy framework, incentives, and how best we can train them and support them, their requirements, etc., which should be part of this conversation in adult. And I think finally, it's not that today we are facing the COVID that this situation is imposing negatively on the peacekeeping. It is imposing negatively on the peacekeeping operation, but the impact of climate change and others are going to bring about issues of this nature, which will continue to impact peacekeeping operations. And it is important, at least in my view, that we start thinking about it. It's not just the COVID-19 situation, but there are going to be other issues that we will have to deal with, and particularly those relating to climate change. But this is where we see from the start of truce monitoring to what we see now, the evolution of peacekeeping operation morphing into some very difficult issues, moving into smaller units, more agile, and bringing more women and leading and addressing the future impacts that we are going to face. Once again, I think I want to thank you, and I also want to say it's a tribute to our peacekeepers. It's a tribute. We should have a very strong political support within Pakistan as well as from the armed forces to continue to play an important role in maintaining the international peace and security. Happy to make any comments further and provide any answers or clarity of thoughts that may be needed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Farooq Iqbal Khan, DG UN. Thank you for your remarks. For this, now I may request Major General Samir Saleh, former DG ISRA, for his remarks, and just a brief intro of General Saleh. Commissioned in Pakistan Army, General Saleh is a graduate of Command and Staff College and National Defense University, Islamabad. The General has served on command, staff, and instructional assignments, including Pakistan Military Academy, United Nations Military Observer, TS at War, Armed Forces War College. He's former DG ISRA at NDU and is pursuing his PhD at National Defense University. General Saleh, sir, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. So nice of you. First of all, my profound salam and regards to everybody. And thanks to Ambassador Azaz and Dr. Shabir for giving me this opportunity to speak on this forum. I just retired last year with completion of 34 years of meritorious service. And I would like to congratulate everybody for celebration of UN Peacekeeping Day. And I think Pakistan is justified in feeling pride and honor because we are one of the oldest contributors of troops for the UN missions, as well as we are one of the oldest host of the UN mission, that is Un in Pakistan. It was in 1960 that this journey started, that we sent our first mission to Congo that comprised 400 troops. And since then, Pakistan has been sometimes third largest contributor, sometimes second largest, and for quite some time being the highest contributor of UN peacekeepers. As regards my UN roles are concerned, these are two that I will like to mention. First, from 1997 to 1998, I was military observer as part of MINURSO, which is a mission, UN mission in Western Sahara. A wonderful experience there. And this mission was meant to maintain peace and ceasefire between Moroccan armed forces and the local Polisario organization which was fighting them. General Bernd Lobeneck from Austria was the force commander, and there were over 20 contributing countries for military observers. We had observers there, we had an engineers company there, and we had a police force there. From 1998 to 2001, once I got repatriated to Pakistan, I was in military secretary's branch, and for over 2.5 years, I was selecting the peacekeepers and the UN missions at MS branch. I would say that Pakistan did the best to contribute in peacekeeping obligations in spite of our numerous security challenges. In numbers, we have been third highest, second highest, and even the first highest as far as the numbers of our contributors were concerned. I've seen in MONUSCO as well as in other missions, Pakistan troops as well as soldiers as well as officers were in high demand because of the quality and professionalism that they displayed on these missions. If I give you my personal example, once I joined MONUSCO, I was supposed to go to the field that is desert, but my force commander wanted to retain me as G2 information officer at his headquarters. So that is the kind of acceptance with which all the missions they receive peacekeepers from Pakistan. Our officers, our soldiers by nature have displayed tremendous amount of empathy and passion for the oppressed people. That is the reason that not only numbers, but even the track record of our soldiers and our officers has been excellent in the world. We hardly come across undesirable activities that we might hear about Indian Army and other country contributors in case of Pakistan soldiers and officers. We have sacrificed huge number of lives and lost over 151 peacekeepers while they were performing their duties, and many of them were very close friends to us. I would like to talk about three glaring aspects. That is, first, I've already said that as regards numbers, we have been highest. As regards conduct, our officers and our soldiers have displayed exemplary conduct and behavior while performing their duties on UN missions. And the foremost aspect that I would like to mention is that in last almost 2 decades, Pakistan has faced unprecedented threat environment. On the east, we had a living enemy in the form of India. On the west, we had a superpower fighting global war on terror. And this global war on terror, it spilled over to Pakistan. And for both these dimensions, we had a very agitated and frustrated inner front. Now, in spite of these challenging times, Pakistan has not shied away from contributing towards our UN obligations. And our UN missions, they continued as normal without any kind of reduction. I would like to speak about 3 strengths that our system enjoys. First is the selection process. Whatever kind of selection process is done at MS branch in case of officers and at AG's branch in case of soldiers, it is very refined. And that is the reason that we send very quality officers and soldiers. Second is the training process. It has matured over a period of time. NUST is doing tremendous job because they were doing the training part of UN Peacekeepers on behalf of GHQ. And third, of course, is the inherent quality of our officers and our soldiers who perform in a very, very exemplary manner once they are on UN missions. As regards future is concerned, we are living with a very peculiar threat environment, and we will have stress on our armed forces to provide additional obligations to the UN. But I'm sure the system is geared up to do all these kind of things. With that, thank you very much, and I'm available for any questions. Thank you, Shabir.
Sir, thank you very much. Thank you very much for your remarks. Now I may request Dr. Turul Yamin for his remarks. And before I invite him, just brief intro. Dr. Turul Yamin is a founding member and Associate Dean of Center for International Peace and Stability which is commonly known as SIPS at NUST. Dr. Yamin earned his PhD from Department of Defense and Strategic Studies, Islamabad, Quaid-e-Azam University, Islamabad. He has taught at Command and Staff College, National Defense University, Islamabad, National University of Modern Languages, Islamabad. He has authored 3 books, which includes one of the very recent book on UN peacekeeping operations in Somalia, a Pakistani perspective. Dr. Yamin, sir, you have the floor. सर आपकी आवाज नहीं आ रही सर we are not hearing you sir you may have to start again sir you have to restart your system अभी अनम्यूट करें सर
Can you hear me now?
Sir, now, sir. We are hearing you now.
मेरी आवाज आ रही है अब आपको?
आ रही है सर, जी सर आ रही है।
अल्लाह साहब आवाज आ रही है आपको?
सर आ रही है, अभी आई है।
अच्छा, शुक्रिया बहुत-बहुत। मैं ये पंखे बंद कर दूं ताकि अच्छा, मैं ये कह रहा था कि मैं आपका बहुत मशकूर हूँ तलत साहब, आपका भी, और एम्बेसडर्स खालिद महमूद साहब और एजाज चौधरी साहब का भी, क्योंकि ISSI ने मुझे फोरम मुहैया किया था जिसमें मैं अपनी बुक लॉन्च कर सकूं। वो किताब, जैसे आप सब लोगों को मालूम है, सोमालिया में पाकिस्तान पीस कीपिंग ऑपरेशंस के बारे में थी, और मेरे लिए ये बहुत मेरे नज़दीक ये बहुत अहम किताब है, क्योंकि मैं इसमें अपनी यूनिट 7FF को खराज तहसीन भी पेश कर रहा था। मेरी यूनिट पहली यूनिट थी दुनिया भर में जिसने मोगदिशु पे कदम रखा, और I would not be far wrong in saying that they were used as guinea pigs. Actually, they were used to test troubled waters of how situation exists on ground. And when they had stabilized the situation, then only the American Marines landed, and they landed as if they were playing to the home gallery. It was a made for CNN show, although Pakistan Army units, particularly 7FF, Parkpet 1, had stabilized the situation over there. And also for me, it is very important because on 5th of June, 1993, we lost 24 peacekeepers. Amongst them, some very dear friends of mine. My unit was involved in rescuing people who had gone to inspect an authorized weapon site, and they were not told. They went there in unarmed vehicles. This was a great failure. There was no coordination, civil-military coordination. They were not told that the Somalis had said that they would take this as an act of war. So I think it was a betrayal of sorts, but Pakistan Army stood its ground. They did not withdraw despite this great loss. 24 men lost in a single day. I think this is the highest number of casualties that has ever taken place in the history of UN military operations. Nonetheless, I think we learned our lessons there. The organization where I am presently employed, which is known as Center for International Peace and Stability, was created because it was felt that the peacekeepers need to be trained in a very professional manner. When my unit went, we went with very little training. When we came back, we told the unit which was replacing us of our experiences, and this was the kind of training that was conducted. But now Center for International Peace and Stability is recognized as, I would say, the best institution where UN peacekeeping training is conducted. This is the only institution in the world which is located in a university. And the reason for locating it in the university is because we want to combine research with practical peacekeeping. So my book was actually a product of research that I carried out in my center. one is that, and second is we have one of the best team of professional peacekeepers who have long history of peacekeeping behind them. Some of them have been peacekeepers twice, some of them thrice. So they, whatever they teach and whatever they train, they do so on the basis of practical experience. And this is also the only center in the world which was inaugurated by UN Secretary General, then Mr. Ban Ki-moon. And it was this is the only center in the world which has been visited twice by a UN Secretary General. A great credit to our Foreign Office, because they were the ones, and also to our Military Operations Directorate, that they were able to convince the Secretary Generals to visit our center. Mr. Antonio Guterres visited us in February, 19th of February this year. So it was a great tribute. And he acknowledged that. He said that we appreciate the kind of training that is imparted to the peacekeepers. And he also paid tributes to our 151 men and women. I would like to specify men and women who have laid down their lives to serve humanity. And it is very difficult as a soldier. You and I know that we are trained to serve our nation, but to serve humanity at large, to put our national prejudices and biases on the back burner and serve with even arch enemies like India on UN missions for the larger cause of humanity needs a change in mindset. So CIPS or CIPS has played a very important role in preparing our peacekeepers. It has been acknowledged as the center of excellence by the current UN Secretary General, because he actually laid the foundation stone for a new building which says that it is going to be the center of excellence for the entire region. So again, this is a big first. It's not India, it's not Bangladesh, it's not any other country, it's CIPS, which is going to be the center of excellence. And inshallah, we will build up on our excellent credentials of being leading organization. So I would like to pick up a few points that were brought out by earlier speakers. One is the role that women play. It has been increasingly realized that it is important to have female peacekeepers because they have greater empathy with vulnerable segments of society. So we have been sending female peacekeepers previously also, which had basically which had included doctors and nurses, paramedical staff. But the female engagement teams, the first of which was sent to Democratic Republic of Congo in June last year, and who performed exceedingly well, comprised psychologists, stress managers, gender advisors, operation officers, information officers, you name it. And our ladies did a wonderful job. They brought laurels to Pakistan. More of them are being prepared. So we would just want to show the world that although we are known to be a conservative society, we can still send our females, women folk, to international hotspots where they can perform very well as compared to so many other first world countries where women going into combat is not a novelty. So we have done it. We will do it in the future. But one or two points that I would like to bring to your notice are, and I'm sure we will also do something about it. One is training in peculiar circumstances like an epidemic. Our soldiers have had the experience of working in Liberia when Ebola virus had assumed the proportions of a pandemic. But this is going to be a phenomenon that will have to deal with in the future also. So I think in the training, and I'm going to tell my colleagues also, we need to focus on how to operate in a conflict zone when an epidemic or pandemic is rampant. Do we carry personal protective equipment? Do we carry laser temperature machines and other things, more sanitizers? So I think this is going to become part and parcel of our equipment that we are going to carry. Then also one point that I would like to highlight is the increasing emphasis on technology. I think we need to pay attention towards it. We are already employing drones. how to interpret the information that is being gained or collected by drones is again a science, an art and a science. We need to be prepared for that. And I think there is also going to be an increasing role for artificial intelligence, of how artificial intelligence is going to help in decision making. So these are some things which I think need some kind of recognition at the Foreign Office level, at our level, at the GHQ level. We need to embed these things in future peacekeeping operations. So this is all from my side. Thank you very much for giving me time to speak on this most important subject. Thank you very much.
Sir, thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much for your remarks. And with this, ladies and gentlemen, I would now request the keynote speaker of today's event, Dr. Syed Kaleem Imam, Inspector General of Police. Dr. Syed Kaleem Imam is an officer of Police Service of Pakistan. After having served as Inspector General of Police, Islamabad, Punjab, Sindh, he is currently serving as IG National Highways and Motorways Police. He is recipient of Tamgha Imtiaz, Qaid-e-Azam, and President Police Medal for gallantry actions, besides 3 UN peacekeeping medals and international fellowships. He has served in United Nations as Chief of Operations, Planning Coordinator in Liberia, and Deputy Police Chief Commissioner, and later as Acting Police Commissioner for African Union, United Nations Mission in Darfur. A very celebrated officer who holds a PhD in Governance and Administrations, besides LLM in Human Rights and MPhil. Inspector General Syed Kaleem Imam, sir, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Dr. Talab. First of all, congratulations and thank you very much for inviting me over here. I was presented with 2 lovely books this morning and hope to go over it. Thank you very much. I have a lot of mentors over here on the screen today, and very respected Ambassador Khalid Mahmood Saab and Ambassador Azaz Ahmed Chaudhry Saab, and I can never forget Lieutenant General Hilal Hussain Saab, who had always been very kind to the police officers, in particular me, and he was always there to help us get selected and be on the job, and he would be after us on the email all the time. Where are you? We are trying to find you. So grateful to all the excellencies. So thank you very much for inviting. I begin my talk with the blessings of Allah, the most beneficent, the most merciful. Let me say on the onset, I'm so delighted for being given an opportunity to share my thoughts on peacekeeping, on this Peacekeeping Day, and role of Pakistan, in particular the Pakistan Police. I'm grateful to the government of Pakistan, the Foreign Office, the Pakistan Permanent Mission, New York, for giving Pakistan police officers a prospect to serve in the largest, most internationally represented, most powerful transnational organization in the world. Letting Pakistani law enforcers in has enabled them to contribute to world peace and security, hailing of human rights, sustainable human developments for security and safety. I confess that I am a proud blue beret. In my career, which spans over 32 years, I served in peacekeeping for almost 5 years. It was in my formative years of service when I was deployed as monitor in Onumos, Mozambique, as Chief of Operations in 1994. And having gone there in United Nations always reminded me of Quranic verse that if anyone saved a life, it would be as if he saved the life of the whole humanity. And this would become my first step in the long walk to serve humanity, the sole meaning of life, and in fact, the service to one divinity. The 3 core values of United Nations: integrity, professionalism, respect for diversity, subsequently became the hallmark of Pakistan police officers' life wherever they serve, nationally and internationally. In years to come, as I worked for that elevated pedestal as planning coordinator in UNMIL and later in a distinct role as commissioner in UNAMID, we were presenting the UN aims to maintain the international peace and security, and police in particular was emphasizing on building the capacity of the conflict regions, local police, their reforms and restructuring, enhancing their operations and investigation abilities to maintain law and order, curb crime, to uphold human rights, and prevent gender and child abuses. Peacekeeping has proven to be one of the most effective tools available to the United Nations to assist the host countries navigate the difficult path of conflict to peace. Peacekeeping is a unique force with military, police, and civilian personnel from all over the world serving together. UN peacekeepers come from diverse cultures and speak different languages, but share common purpose, the protection of vulnerable communities. As the Secretary General recently quoted that, and we as much are convinced as he is, there's no other way to deal with the global challenges than through the global responses. Peacekeeping is flexible, and today multi-dimensional peacekeeping operations are called upon not only to maintain peace and security, but also to facilitate the political process, protect civilians, assist in the disarmament, demobilization, reintegration of former combatants, support the organization of elections, protect and promote human rights, and assist in restoring rule of law. Since 1948, more than a million women and men have served as UN peacekeepers. Every day, they make a tangible difference in the lives of the millions of the world's most vulnerable people. And every day, they save their lives. Pakistan is one of the longest serving and largest contributors to UN peacekeeping. And we are following the vision of Qaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah, that our foreign policy is one of friendliness and goodwill towards the world. Pakistan will never be found lacking in extending its material and moral support to the oppressed and suppressed people of the world, and in upholding the principles of United Nations Charter. Over the last over 72 years, Pakistan has made significant contribution in promotion and maintenance of international peace. UN peacekeepers and their families make great sacrifices. They serve at great personal risk and in harsh conditions. Let's express gratitude to all the civilians, police, and military personnel currently deployed in the United Nations. Tragically, some make the ultimate sacrifice in the cause of peace. Today, the world is going through a difficult phase and facing the biggest challenge in the shape of COVID-19. Globally, as reported by WHO, till yesterday, there have been 500,000 confirmed cases and over 0.3 million deaths. In this current situation, UN peacekeeping mandate is commendable that UN troops, the Pakistani police officers and the military are helping the countries to address COVID-19 pandemic. Pakistan has come a long way, significantly contributed in maintenance of world peace. Serving in UN is an honor. It enhances one's professionalism. Besides, gives exposure to understand other nation and their sole way of life. I proudly say I have friends in almost every other country, and our policing methodology is a synthesis of what we have learned. It's heartening. We are still part of each other's love and sorrow. This global village cares when it comes to humanity. UN has provided a platform. Pakistan government has rightly and duly rendered its role. I and many thousands other Pakistanis are proud they were part of the global initiative to serve humanity. I would just like to make few suggestions as we move ahead, because I can see a lot of people over here who are part of the strategy and policy formations of deployment of Pakistan police to the United Nations field missions over here. One, I would suggest that we should come up an idea of deploying females FPU. We see a marked difference when we saw the first ever female FPU in Liberia sent by one of our neighboring countries, and it made a big difference. Secondly, male deployment, like one Mr. Shamresh Salik has pointed out, doesn't really solve. You need to have a very scrutinized process to see that those who are attuned and have the aptitude and can actually deliver, can actually serve in that hostile and not so conducive environment, are sent to make a difference. Pakistani police officers have made a difference. Many lessons can be learned from what we did over there. And one such recommendations come from the end of assignment reports, which various officers present as they come back. And there are many good lessons to be learned that we can adopt over here, include them in the best practices over here. In the end, I would say that I'm so grateful that I'm here and to be back among the UN family and people talking about UN. Last, I was in UNOMED in 2014, the largest ever hybrid mission. I'm mostly known as an African expert because I've served in Mozambique, Liberia, and Darfur. And so I have great association with Africa. But it's wonderful to serve in United Nations. And when you come back, you are a different man with so much exposure. And like I said, you make so many friends out there. I would also recommend that there are a lot of civilians who apply for United Nations and that they don't go through directly government of Pakistan. And once you go to the missions, you meet many of them. If they can also brought in some sort of a forum, and their capacity can also be built, and they can also have a view of the national interest, because many of them are sort of a lone rider and they enter United Nations and serve there for many years in key appointments. I would also like to say that there's a lot of space in field missions, and which we should take over because we have the expertise over here. Learning French and learning Arabic would be something very important in days to come, because most of the missions actually are of these two language-speaking people, and the conflict is mostly in that region. So that's all, and thank you very much, sir. And I'm grateful to Azaz Saab and Ambassador Khalid Mahmood Saab and Hilal Saab. And thank you very much. God bless you all. Thank you.
Sir, thank you very much. Thank you very much for your remarks. With this, ladies and gentlemen, we'll now invite our chief guest, Lieutenant General Hilal Hussain. And before I invite him, just brief intro. Commissioned in Corps of Artillery, Lieutenant General Hilal Hussain is a graduate of Command and Staff College, Quetta, Australian Command and Staff College, Queenscliff, and Armed Forces War College. The General has commanded an infantry division, Punjab Rangers, a strike corps, and Army Strategic Forces. Besides serving as military secretary to the President of Pakistan, he was an instructor at Staff College and War College. Awarded with 2 gallantry recognitions, the General has been a military advisor to Pakistan's permanent representative in the United Nations from 2002 to 2005. General Hilal Hussain, sir, you have the floor.
Thank you, Talat. Am I audible?
Sir.
Okay. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Chairman, Board of Governors, Ambassador Khalid Mahmood, Director General, Institute of Strategic Studies, Islamabad, Ambassador Azaz Ahmed Chaudhry, host of the event, Director, China-Pakistan Study Center, Dr. Talat Shabir, and my very, very worthy and respected seniors who spoke earlier. Good morning and Assalamu alaikum. Let me begin by thanking you for this opportunity to speak on Pakistan's contribution to peacekeeping operations. And also, let me begin by congratulating you on celebrating this auspicious day in such a befitting manner. Peacekeeping is one of the most important activities undertaken by the United Nations, aimed at maintenance of peace and security in the world. Over the past 6 decades, peacekeeping has evolved from a military model to a complex model of many key elements like military, police, and civilians all working together to achieve sustainable peace. So far, 71 UN peace missions, UN missions have been launched since 1948. Currently, 15 UN missions are there in 4 continents with over 15,000 civilians and 96,000 uniformed personnel from 120 countries. So far, a total of 3,709 sacrifices have been made by peacekeepers for the world peace. Being a founding member of the United Nations, despite problems on its own borders, as mentioned earlier, Pakistan has always extended maximum possible support to maintain peace and stability around the globe. Basically, like to speak in the sequence, beginning with the evolution of UN peacekeeping operations, and then focus on history of Pakistan's contribution to the United Nations peacekeeping operations. I would also like to speak about the peacekeeping training, of which a very eminent speaker is already here. And then I will end by talking about the evolving trends and expectations. Coming to the evolution of UN peacekeeping, we can broadly divide UN peacekeeping timelines into three different stages: the initial years, the post-Cold War years, and the contemporary peacekeeping. The initial years from 1945 to 1988, which mainly revolved around traditional peacekeeping with focus on adherence to fundamental principles of UN Charter, which are impartiality, consent of parties, and non-use of force except in self-defense and defense of the mandate. The second stage is post-Cold War peacekeeping from 1989 to 2010, which revolved around surge and reassessments, peacekeeping stretched with deployments in remote, uncertain operational and political environments. Failures of peacekeeping in Somalia, Bosnia, and Rwanda invoked reassessment of how peacekeeping was done, and new dimensions were added to peacekeeping, like introduction of administrators, police officers, legal experts, deminers, human rights monitors, and civil affairs specialists. And last of all, the contemporary peacekeeping, which started from 2010. During this period, asymmetric threat has been added to the threat vector, and terrorism and transnational crime have, with focus on protection of civilians and rule of law mandates, etc. Peacekeeping operations launched in the midst of a conflict with no peace to keep. Robust peacekeeping became a norm, stretching to offensive operations. Force Intervention Brigade in Congo is one such example. Ever-growing mandated tasks in UN peacekeeping missions make things increasingly difficult for peacekeepers in managing expectations. The history of Pakistan's engagement in UN PTOs. Our contribution timelines are Pakistan's journey with UN peacekeeping began in July 1960, when Pakistan became part of UN peacekeeping efforts only after 13 years of independence. In 1960s, our first ever deployment was in Congo. In the 80s, we participated in UN mission in Namibia, whereas in 90s, we participated in 16 UN missions, out of which 5 missions are still going on. In 2000, we participated in 12 UN missions, out of which 2 are still ongoing. And in 2010, we participated in 10 UN missions in this decade, mainly in Central African Republic and Congo. The total contribution of Pakistani troops over all this time frame is around 200,000, along with 403 women peacekeepers in 46 UN missions and in 28 countries. At present, Pakistan is among the top troop contributing countries. I think it's 6th in the ranking right now. Currently, Pakistan deploys 4 infantry units, 3 engineer companies, 1 field police unit, 1 hospital, and 3 aviation units, with a total strength of 4,300. Coming to the sacrifices in the noble cause of the world peace, a figure of 151 has been mentioned over here, including 24 officers. But I believe the figure is slightly higher than this. The missions hosted by Pakistan. Pakistan has hosted UN Military Observer Group in India and Pakistan, UNMOGIP, from 1949 to date. UN India-Pakistan Observer Mission, 1965 and 66. And UN Good Officers Mission in Afghanistan and Pakistan, which was UNGOMAP. It was from 1988 to 1990. Pakistan's representation at the United Nations at higher management level. Pakistan has been represented by 2 special envoys of Secretary General and 3 special representatives of the Secretary General. We have had over a period of time 6 force commanders, 4 deputy force commanders, 5 chief military observers. Pakistan also had the honor of having a military advisor. Lieutenant General Maqsood served in the United Nations as military advisor in Department of Peacekeeping Operations. Currently, Major General Ziaur Rahman is currently serving as the force commander in Western Sahara. A little bit about peacekeeping training. The system of training for peacekeeper existed in the army since 60s. However, establishment of a Center for International Peace and Stability in Islamabad, Pakistan, under the patronage of National University of Science and Technology, has added an immense value to international standards of training. UNSG, Mr. Ban Ki-moon inaugurated CPS in August 2013, which was established to impart training to UN peacekeepers, including contingent commanders, UNMOs, UNSOs, and so on. Over 1,000 officers, including 96 foreign students, have so far attended various courses in CPS. Currently, the courses being organized in CPS are UN Senior Mission Leaders Course, UN Contingent Commanders Course, Military Observer Course, Staff Officers Course, and UN Training for Trainers, apart from UN Protection of Civilian Course and UN Logistic Officers Course. Briefly, something about the evolving trends and expectations. First of all is political challenges, which is primacy of the politics. Never in the history of United Nations peacekeeping acquired such an importance as of now, not only in terms of number of peacekeepers on ground, but also in terms of mandates and expectations. High-level independent panel for peacekeeping operations reports talks of primacy of policy, and present Secretary General calls for greater focus on the need for political process. Peacekeeping operation is a tool to create space for nationally owned political solution. Peace operations cannot succeed if they are deployed in lieu of political solution rather than in support of one. The complexity of mandates and management of the mission. Over a period of time, the mandates have gone complex and have increased in number. Missions in South Sudan have nearly 209 mandated tasks, which are actually very hard to follow and implement. There is a growing realization for realistic and practical mandates for all the peacekeeping missions. Safety and security of the troops. UN peacekeeping missions operate in far more dangerous, complex, and high-risk environment under the threat of armed groups, criminals, and terrorists. In missions like Mali, DRC, blue helmets frequently come under direct attacks. The COO's report on improving security for UN peacekeepers, published in 2018, has identified measures like changing mindsets, improving capacities, achieving a threat-sensitive mission footprint, and enhancing accountability within the UN missions. Fundamentals of peacekeeping. The evolving nature of conflict and challenging operating environments are often invoked to argue for robust peacekeeping, peace enforcement, and counter-terrorism operations by the peacekeepers. Blurring the line between peacekeeping and peace enforcement holds high risk, as it impacts neutrality of the blue helmets, making them even more vulnerable to targeted attacks. We need to preserve fundamentals of peacekeeping even in changing realities. However, these principles by no means deter peacekeepers from using force in self-defense and in the defense of the mandate. Protection of the civilian is one of the vital mandated tasks in most of the high-risk missions. The task of protection of civilian requires specific enablers and capabilities. The notion of use of force in peacekeeping for protection of civilian needs careful evaluation of all legal aspects and sensitivities of the host nations. We always demand Secretariat and Security Council to clearly articulate specific tasks like protection of civilians in terms of expectations, requisite resources, and capabilities. If resources are shrinking, expectations need to be adjusted accordingly. Gender balancing. In line of Secretary General's directive, gender balancing remains a high UN priority. Remaining cognizant of our responsibility, Pakistan has undertaken steps to improve female signature within the mission. In line with Secretary General's gender parity strategy, Pakistan met target of deploying 15% female staff officers in field missions. Pakistan also deployed our first ever female engagement team in DRC Congo as part of Infantry Battalion in May 2019. Efficacy of Peacekeeping Capability Readiness System. UN has introduced Peacekeeping Capability Readiness System to enable availability of forces to facilitate early mission startups and to address critical capability gaps in high-risk missions. Pledging conferences have generated a lot of pledges in terms of troops and equipment. However, there appears a mismatch between availability of forces against the troops reduction and mission drawdowns, which are current, and budget cuts, which are currently going on. Use of technology has already been mentioned adequately. And last of all is Secretary General's Initiative for Action of Peacekeeping, which is A4P. This initiative was started in 2018, and Pakistan was the first signatory to this initiative. Before I conclude, I would like to mention two episodes from my personal experience. The first is in a mission in Congo, 22 Bangladeshi peacekeepers were ambushed and killed. And the situation was very precarious. This was somewhere in 2003 or 4. And very quickly, an operation was put together, which had a very high symbolic value, but very high ground effectiveness also. I think it was a Punjab battalion of Pakistan Army, which went on ground against the bad guys. And in the air, the helicopter gunships of Indian Army supported the operation. And within no time, things were righted and the culprits were brought to books. The second is that we were putting in a mission for Liberia, and I was about to pledge an infantry battalion, and we were sitting in a small room. The fourth generation chief was an Indian serving colonel. His name was Barinder Dedwal. He was there, and there were some diplomats from the countries like Scandinavian countries, Denmark and others. So when the whole thing was decided, and I said, okay, I pledge one infantry battalion to you for this mission. So suddenly a diplomat from Denmark, he asked me, Colonel, are you sure your troops can handle this level of violence? And before I could reply, the Indian colonel chipped in. He said, Excellency, I assure you from personal experience that Pakistan Army can handle any kind of fluid situation with utmost ease and efficiency. That's the kind of respect that Pakistan Army and its peacekeepers have enjoyed over the years. Thank you very much. Thanks for your patient listening. And I must thank one by one all of you for your excellent expose. I stand much more educated today about the contemporary peacekeeping than I was before. Thank you, sir.
So thank you very much, sir, for your address. And before I request Ambassador Khalid Mahmood for concluding remarks, I would just request Ambassador Chaudhary for a brief intervention. Sir, you have the floor, please.
Thank you, and thank you very much. I just wanted to reflect on one element which has been highlighted by many of you, which is the relevance and usefulness of United Nations Military Observer Group in India and Pakistan. I think this is one of the oldest, and had India cooperated with the UNMOGAP, we would have seen its utility much more than what it is. Pakistan and India have clashed at the line of control countless times, and the very purpose of UNMOGAP was to monitor and to identify where the fault was. But unfortunately, because of lack of cooperation from the Indian side, the UNMOGAP has not been able to perform as effectively as it could have. The government of Pakistan, however, remains fully committed to supporting UNMOGAP and thinks that it can play a very useful role for peace and tranquility at the line of control. I thought this should also be mentioned. The second point I want to make is that all these good ideas that have emerged from today's conversations, we will reduce them into a report, which we will share with you, but also circulate it very widely through our system. We will also circulate the highlights through entire range of social media that we are now employing. And of course, we will share with our sponsor organization, which is the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Pakistan, being represented here by the DGUUN at the moment. Thank you. Thank you. And back to you, Talat.
Thank you very much, sir. With this, ladies and gentlemen, I would now request Ambassador Khalid Mahmood for concluding remarks. Just brief intro of Ambassador Khalid Mahmood. Ambassador Khalid Mahmood is Chairman of Board of Governors of Institute of Strategic Studies. He is a former Ambassador of Pakistan to Iraq, Iran, China, Saudi Arabia, and Mongolia. He has also been a former permanent representative of Pakistan to OIC and ECO. Ambassador Khalid Mahmood, sir, you have the floor.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. As we mark today the day of UN peacekeeping, it's very heartening to see that many of the speakers at this forum today have served in various peacekeeping operations, and they have brought here to share with us their knowledge, experience, the difficulties, the challenges they faced while serving in those UN peacekeeping missions. Already much has been said about the evolution of peacekeeping, its main prerequisites, and the difficulties, etc. You see, after the Holocaust of World War II, the UN came into existence. And one of the main purposes of the UN was to save succeeding generations from the scourge of war. That is, maintenance of peace and security. So that is why the purpose and principles of the UN Charter and rest of the charters, also emphasizes this responsibility of the United Nations. And to ensure that a full mechanism was established. But unfortunately, because of the Cold War, which set in immediately after the end of World War II, that system could not work because of, as we know, the veto powers exercised by one or the other permanent member of the Security Council. So the Charter does not mention this peacekeeping operations. You'll be surprised. It mentions about pacific settlement of disputes and enforcement action, but not about peacekeeping. So this was an innovation, a creative response from the UN to fill in the gap between these two other responsibilities. That's why peacekeepings are called as Chapter 6.5. 6 deals with the pacific settlement, 7th with enforcement. Now, over the year, in the beginning, peacekeepers were in civilian clothes, unarmed, and they went just for limited purpose of supervising the ceasefires. But over the time, to meet the changing requirements, now the role of the peacekeepers has expanded to the role of a virtually government. As I was reading here, the peacekeepers now supervise ceasefires, they demobilization of forces, reintegration into civilian life, destruction of weapons, remining programs, looking after refugees and displaced persons, extending humanitarian assistance, establishment of new police forces, verification of human rights, supervision of constitutional, judicial, and electoral reforms, organizing, supervising, or conducting elections, and so on. So in other words, they are now performing the role of virtually a government, particularly on those areas which we call failed states. Secondly, the function of the peacekeepers has moved from managing interstate problems to problems within the states. Terrorism and drug trafficking and all such things, and breakdown of law and order within the countries. So accordingly, the function of the peacekeepers has been expanding, and but it has created many problems also. So I will not go into detail, but to say that the main difficulties, as has been pointed out, is that a mandate is never very clear and precise, because mandate of various peacekeeping missions is the result of compromise among the big powers, and they fudge over many points. So it creates problems for the peacekeepers. They are not clear about their precise role. So we need to have very precise, concrete, realistic mandate, and then they should be provided with full facilities. Now, what facilities? Come to think of it, it is all ad hocism. UN Charter had provision that countries will pledge their forces in advance, enter into agreement with the UN. What personnel, forces, equipment, etc., they could provide to the UN. But now, each time when a peacekeeping operation is mounted, the Secretary General has to start the process of approaching the government, then government saying we place this much at the disposal of the UN, then mobilizing those resources. Of course, little bit progress has been made in that direction, but still it is not a standing army. It is not a standing institution. Each time the Secretary General has to cobble up all these arrangements. So we need to have something, structured, permanent readiness, arrangements. And then the question of, resources, the funding. There have been cases when the big powers like Soviet Union in the past, France, they refused to pay their contribution to the peacekeeping operations. But then the advice of the International Court of Justice was sought. So in its advisory opinion, International Court of Justice stated that member states are under obligation to pay for this peacekeeping funds or assessment. So that is an improvement. Since then, no one objects to that, but still many countries remain in areas, in providing their assessed contribution to peacekeeping. See, one of the main problems which I see in these peacekeeping operations, very well, good work done, but they tend to freeze the conflicts instead of resolving it. Take the case of Palestine, take the case of Kashmir. They are the oldest peacekeeping operations there, Unsaw, Mugib. Those disputes are there. So this is the drawback of peacekeeping operations, that they tend to freeze the disputes instead of resolving them. So what's needed is a wholesome approach, starting from confidence building measures, preventive diplomacy, peacekeeping, peace building, conflict resolution. All these avenues have to be explored, maybe consecutively, maybe at the same time. But this is, I think, one of the main weakness of the freezing of the problems. Then there is another, according to some people, that there is no sunset clause in these peacekeeping operations, unless the Security Council itself, puts that clause in the mandate. other problems of safety of the peacekeepers. We lost so many people, particularly in Somalia. More than 150 we have lost peacekeepers. So there is now a proposal or arrangements that in advance survey, teams are sent to survey the situation and to determine what kind of people or training those peacekeepers should have to deal with the situation in that area. The involvement of women is very encouraging because it gives a new, nuance to these peacekeeper operations, and women are sometimes better placed to bring about peace among warring factions. Pakistan's role has already been commented upon by all the speakers before me. But from my personal experience, first of all, I must tell you, I've been involved with this peacekeeping for quite some time. When I was posted to our mission to the UN for more than 8-9 years, I was the permanent representative of the Peacekeeping Committee. And later on, I was member of Peace Building Fund, Secretary General's Advisory Board. And in that capacity, I went to Liberia and also went to East Timor. I must tell you that whomever I met there, the governors, the president, the prime ministers, or even in the receptions, the common people, they all were in full praise of Pakistani peacekeepers there. And the reason is because we have learned that how much care is taken in selection of the Pakistani keepers and their training, particularly now at the SIPS center at the NUST. It is no wonder that UN peacekeeping has won Nobel Peace Prize in 1998. And Pakistan's mission in Sierra Leone was cited as the model peacekeeping mission. So I could go on, talking about this peacekeeping, but one thing is clear, that this is the role for which UN can take some pride. And because it is contributing to the maintenance of peace and security, the primary responsibility of the UN. And it is on the cheap. Maximum budget for peacekeepers is quite large, but it's about $8 billion or so. But it is minuscule of what is spent on military spending in the world. It is, I don't have the figures here, but I was astonished to see that it was, even the United States budget, military budget, is many times what spent on UN peacekeepers in the whole world. So it is a cheaper instrument which is paying very good dividends, and I think it deserves the support of all the international community. And I'm so happy to see that Pakistan is fully honoring this responsibility with great distinction. So congratulations to Pakistani peacekeepers, and congratulations to the UN for its role in the maintenance of peace and security through this instrument of peacekeeping. Thank you.
So thank you very much for your concluding remarks. I would again like to thank all the speakers who have taken their time out of their schedules and joined us in celebrating this event today. And with this, we come to the conclusion of the event. Please stay safe. Thank you very much. Khulda Hafiz.